Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are live on the 5th of August. Turns out it is a Thursday. Who knew? 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Right now on the Awaken the World group page, Mass Psychosis and Mindicide. Dum dum dum. You're all doomed. Sorry, that's one of those words. What was the other one? Blob. So there we go. Let's just get that right out of the way, and then Garhen will be okay. Maybe, probably not, but hope springs infernal. Uh, so before we begin, as always, let me express my love for each and every one of you. No matter what's happening right now in the world, believe it or not, it's quite perfect. And I know that can be a lot to take, but you really must try to see it from that higher point of view and understand that this is an illusion, a very important illusion, but illusion nevertheless. And it's learning and maintaining that balance that makes all the difference in your day-to-day existence here. So you can't really tell because of all the camera balancing going on, but we have just been inundated this afternoon. I mean, we already had a light, baseline of forest fire smoke, but we've been inundated by a very thick cloud of it. It's turned the sun a deep, deep orange and the sky a very strange color and feels very dystopian. And it, uh, it just it makes the whole day sort of blend into itself because there doesn't seem to be that pattern of dark light, really bright light, then fading light. It just seems to be all this haze color most of the time. So what we're going to talk about tonight? Well, we're going to talk about a couple of the big issues that are going on in our world right now, and I want to talk about a guy who, when you think about it, really his name was Gustave the Good. It was Gustave Le Bon, and Gustave Le Bon realized, and this is, I'm paraphrasing, but basically what he said is that society or the masses have never thirsted for truth. They turn aside from, in your face evidence, the evidence that's right there, and instead they are seduced by a lie, and then they deify that lie because somehow that lie is making them feel better. And on some deep level, they actually know it's a lie, but they will not look at that no matter what. Gustav went further on to say that whoever supplies them with the illusion, and I would say not just the illusion, but the best illusion, the best delusion, okay, the lie that satisfies them the most is easily their master. And of course, anyone who seeks to remove the blinds or goes against the lie becomes the victim. Now, we're seeing this in the world today in the way that so many things in our existence have become polarized. And no matter where we turn and look, we're and I notice this all the time, we're literally being programmed by being reminded over and over and over again of our supposed differences in political views, differences in pandemic views with COVID, difference in vaccination views, and all these things are being hammered at us not to help anything, but actually to keep us squabbling amongst ourselves, to keep us not focused, to keep us feeling separate from each other. Because as long as we're feeling separate from each other and alone and isolated, we're easy to get a handle on, or a lot easier to get a handle on. It's a lot easier to be controlled. So, psychologically, I'm going to turn back to Pavlov's dogs for just a moment here because, one of the other things, and Pavlov, yeah, I love the cartoons of the dog dragging him out into the street and shooting him. On one hand, okay, because he certainly didn't treat animals very well. Um, but there was an interesting background effect that was very much picked up on and utilized. And one of the reasons why Pavlov was so successful is he was kind of the guy who figured out to segregate the animal in every way so that the dog that Pavlov was trying to train or to experiment on in whatever way he was going to experiment on was forced into paying all its attention to the experience and to Pavlov. There was nothing to draw its attention away anywhere else. It became completely isolated. And this isolation tactic is something that was picked up upon by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung picked up on that whole isolation tactic in a different sort of way. And the way he looked at it was that mankind, in other words, us, was our own biggest enemy. That the greatest risk to human beings was to ourselves. And that the forces of our own psyche were our most damaging and most dangerous enemy on this planet. Now, he talked about a Latin proverb, a man is a wolf unto man. And what this really means is that wolf-like behavior, that running and working together in packs to do harm and get what you want and those sort of things, and this wolf, mentality amongst the sheep very much starts to come out in societies or civilizations where mental illness has become the norm. In other words, in a society or a civilization where there are more people with some form of mental illness than there are people who profess to be totally sane. And it's very interesting to note that in our modern lifestyle, in our modern world, in the first world, we have past 2/3 of the civilization, of the society, reporting some sort of mental illness. Now, you may sit there and say, yeah, Garhen, sure, right. A whole society falling into some sort of strange mass psychosis. Never happened before. Won't happen again. But it did happen before. So, of course, we have to go to the 16th and 17th century, both in in North America and in Europe, where we had, of course, the witch trials, the witch hunts. This was a period of mass psychosis, where it was more convenient to believe the lie. And therefore, once the lie is believed, engage in acts that no individual by themselves would do, but in groups under this mass psychosis, women were ultimately killed in great number. So much so that Francis Hill, a writer who was over in Europe, surveying small towns at the end of the witch hunts, reported that so many communities had almost no women left. They had all been killed. They'd all been branded witches and killed. And this is part of that mass psychosis. So we look at where we are today, and what it really is that an epidemic of madness that occurs when a large portion of the society loses touch with reality due to fear and anxiety and panic. And whether that fear is real or manufactured, or that anxiety that they feel anxious about is real or manufactured, this mass psychotic event begins to take shape and begins to take place. And we're really facing one right now where human beings have become morally and spiritually corrupt in support of the psychosis that they are under, in order to allay the fear and the anxiety and the panic. So, contrary to normal thinking, and this is actually quite the case, okay? It is wrong to think that when somebody has a psychotic break, that they are descending into disorder. As a matter of fact, a psychotic break is actually a reordering of reality, a mixing of reality and delusion within that individual or within that society, in order to return to that homeostatic state, to somehow allay that fear and that panic and the idea that there's something terribly wrong going on. So the whole of our civilization begins to fall under this mass delusion. And one of the things that feeds that, of course, are or what are known as psychogenic triggers. And these are the psychological triggers that can be hit by physical events. For example, COVID-19. If you remember way back at the beginning of the pandemic, the fear in the grocery store here in town was so palpable you could cut it with a knife. As a matter of fact, it probably wouldn't even be cut with a knife. You'd have to use like a big sword to cut it. It was that thick. This psychological path that we are going down is part of that control mechanism that we fall victim to so easily. And it includes parts of the delusion, including social media. And it's not that social media is the enemy. It's not. There isn't an enemy here. We're literally doing this to ourselves, whether it's a faction within humanity or the group of humanity, the masses of humanity itself. But we are literally coming into a state of mass psychosis. And this state is growing more and more every day. So many are afraid at what's happening on every level of our being. And that fear, when not faced, when not dealt with mature and spiritually minded and open-hearted response instead of reaction, we end up not taking the actions necessary, but instead descend further into madness, or turn, as we have done, and go more and more deeply into those things that somehow dull the pain. Whether it's movie after movie after movie, or TV show after TV show after TV show, or day upon day upon day of staring at the screen. Whatever it is that you use, whether it's alcohol or drugs or food, in every way we have taken away from ourselves the time to be still, to really contemplate what's going on around us and how we should respond in light of it instead of react. So, humanity is entering a very serious time over the next few years. And again, this isn't to scare anybody. This is to make people aware and to give you solid advice on how you can deal with this. And of course, as always, You must understand that if you're not part of the mass psychosis, in other words, if you've woken up to what's going on, you are more than likely at some point to become the victim of the mass psychosis. This is almost built into the system, so we have to be prepared for that sort of thing. And that doesn't mean that you're going to go out and buy weapons to defend yourself or anything else crazy like that. What it means is you're going to have to understand that in your desire to wake people from their mass delusion, in your desire to show people that we do have the ability to act together and do something about this, to do something about the state of our world, that you're going to face consequences for that in a society that is literally going insane. So what do I mean when I talk about mindicide? Well, mindicide, has to do with all the various levers of the system that are designed to keep you from learning how to think critically for yourself. And this is why I always say, you have to pick apart very carefully what you hold to be true with yourself and see where it came from. Every day we are bombarded if we're not very aware. And I do want to point this out about Facebook. Like I love the platform and I love our group page, and I very much enjoy our wall, our news wall. And I find value in the communication capabilities, but at the same time, like anything else, if you're not careful, it very quickly can descend into that chaotic abuse. The endless doom scrolling, if you will. And I think it's worth mentioning here one more time that, even though I do love the word doom, I really do. I would be a blob there's no worry here. This isn't about negativity or being upset. Whatever's going to come humanity's way is absolutely necessary. Why? Because it's happening. And we need it. And what we're going to do about it is going to determine our future. As always, we have the choice. This is the gift. This is the hope. And ultimately, the end is always assured. But we are being driven at every level, a literal killing of the human mind. Whether it's through endless meaningless entertainment, or being forced into hectic, long hours of work, or being wrapped around the news cycle and not pulling yourself out of it. There's so many of these things that contribute to killing off our minds. The creation and consumption of terribly unhealthy food, of us poisoning our air and poisoning our water. All these things begin to kill off your mind. And when I speak about your mind, I'm speaking, of course, about the interface here into this physical realm, upon which we all depend to have this human experience. And we call that our brain. Now, as I said, your mind doesn't reside in the brain. The brain is a result of the mind's influence on the human body. You can think of the brain as a receiver for the mind. But that receiver can be damaged. And it is damaged a lot of times through, and this is where we have to begin with our young right now, and remove the bright flashing lights. Take time to get away from the screens and go back to a good book. Take time and sit and contemplate. And if you find yourself with nothing to do, do nothing for a little while. Begin to notice that despite the very clear signs that have been mounting over the decades, that we have to change the way that we live, that we have to reevaluate our societies, we have to deal with the inequalities, nothing is really moving. We're still playing the same old games with ourselves. We're still making the same old excuses as the world burns and drowns around us, depending where you live. That's it. That's all. That's all I have tonight. Some thoughts to think about, to understand that, when we give in to fear, when we give in to panic, when we give in to anxiety, we literally become primed to fall into that mass psychosis. And I guess maybe the worst part of it all is that those who are lost in that mass psychosis, they are innocent. Their view of the world has become so harmed, so twisted out of fear and anxiety, that they don't see the same space that someone who is calm and at peace sees. They literally are in a different world. We must have patience with them. We must have understanding. We must strive to make sure they understand that ultimately everything is going to be perfectly okay. Namaste. That's all. Much love to each and every one of you. I hope you have a beautiful Thursday evening. May you be free of smoke, and if not, stay inside where the air quality is a little better. Look after yourself. Each of you are important. Each of you have a contribution that humanity needs now more than ever. A gift. Again, all my love. Take care.